Hey, how's everybody doing today? Hope you guys are having a great week. And today I'm going to look at a passage of scripture that appears to be a place where two verses, one right after the other, directly contradict each other. We're going to look at those. And in those verses, you're also going to see why the Bible has timeless truths in it. Because these two verses, I believe, directly address social media. Are you ready? We're in Proverbs chapter 26, verses 4 and 5. First verse says, "Don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are." So there we have social media. Second, we have, "Be sure to answer the foolish arguments of fools, or they will become wise in their estimation." So if you look at those two verses, you're thinking, well, those two verses are saying the exact opposite thing. But the fact is that they're giving us two possible ways to deal with foolish arguments, or when people say something, or when you come across something. The first thing is, I'm sure there have been times where you have gotten an argument from someone, or someone has said something to you, and you thought, well, that sounds off, and you answered it, and then when they came back, then you realized that you were not going to get anywhere with this conversation. But sometimes you don't know until you start, and then there are some people that say or do things that it's just not worth responding at all. And that might be more often than not sometimes when we're looking at certain things on social media. So, when we all got started on social media, it was a new platform, and, perhaps we got into more arguments than we probably should have. I rarely ever respond to something more than once. Occasionally, if I respond, someone will, sometimes they'll come back with another argument, and most times I'll just let those go. But I do believe there are two things we can look at. Number one, you're not, for the most part, unless you're correcting factual information that you can both agree on, you're not going to win internet arguments. I've not had a single person come up to me since the days that social media have started and said, "You know what?" I said, "I got saved because I was arguing about something on the internet, and some guy came on, and he was obviously right, and I realized it, and I got saved." I've not yet met one person that has come to that conclusion. The other thing that it does is it ends up making us look foolish. Sometimes we lose our temper, we get frustrated when we're trying to answer arguments. As hard as it can be, the best thing most of the time is just to say nothing. Now, there are times, particularly when it's maybe somebody that we love or care about, that maybe we need to do something privately and say, "Hey, you said this, maybe you didn't realize this, or you didn't know this information, you didn't realize how that might come across." And sometimes that can be beneficial. So these two verses aren't mutually exclusive. In other words, they're not telling us the opposite things. They're talking about different situations. And so when you see that verse in the scripture, those two verses, and you read them one right after the other, there's a reason they're right after the other. I mean, why would the writer of Proverbs tell us two things that were contradictory? It's because they're not contradictory. They're two different paths that we can take. And honestly, most of the time, the best path is to not respond. That's usually the best path to take. Sometimes I see criticism or whatever of myself or someone else, and it's easy to get into responses, but it's usually best to just either address it with them privately or just not to address it at all. It does say, "We be sure to answer the foolish arguments of fools, or they will become wise in their own estimation." Sometimes the best remedy for us in making sure that we're staying on the right path is when someone challenges us. And sometimes it's okay to challenge the things that people are saying, but just try to stop. I mean, make sure that you have an end result. Maybe you just want people to know that there's another side to it, and you put that out there and then you leave it alone. There are lots of different situations and lots of things that we come across in life. And one of the things that we need to make clear in responding on social media or to people in person is, what am I really hoping to accomplish here? Is there really a chance that something that I say or do could have a meaningful impact, or am I just responding to something they said because it made me angry and I want to get my anger out by zinging them or making them look foolish or whatever? That rarely ever works. As a matter of fact, 99% of the time, it has a reverse effect. It makes us look foolish for responding in the first place. So you'll hear different times there are contradictions in the Bible, and there are things that if you look at them on the surface can appear that way, but the more that we kind of look into them, the more we realize that there aren't contradictions in the Bible. God's the same all the way through, and this has given us two separate reasons. One is, the first one says, look, don't become as foolish as they are in your responses. Don't get personal. If you say something or you see something and they're talking about facts and you respond with a fact and then they respond with a personal insult, leave it alone and move on. As a matter of fact, don't you respond with a personal insult. Either address the factual situation and try to be as non-confrontational as you can, but whatever you do, don't make comments about somebody else's intelligence, about somebody else's looks or anything else. Stick to something that's the third party, because when we respond, we can look foolish, particularly if we do it in the wrong way. And then the second thing, be sure to answer the foolish arguments of fools, or they will become wise in their own estimation. The biggest contribution to our own wisdom is when people challenge us in the way that we think. Questions can seem sometimes aggressive, but questions, when people question what we say and what we believe, oftentimes causes us to go and look at the facts. So a lot of times, the best way to do it is just to ask a question. If you think that someone has said something that's factually incorrect, just ask a question and then leave it at that and move on. So you got a lesson on biblical truth and on social media, all in one Bible study, because that's what we do here is we try to deliver more than we promise. All right. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you either online or in person this Sunday. Have a good one. Be blessed.